Kemp is actually a charming cat. I don't like his politics at all. On the local news station, CBS 46, when I would call Kemp to debate, he would come to the local news station and debate. 1 hour away, 2 hours away, it didn't matter. He would come there and debate. He's also the only Republican. Keep in mind, there's a lot of Republicans statewide running in Georgia who are not already elected. He was the only Republican that came to an event called Black Radio United for the Vote. It took all of us Black radio personalities, myself, Frank Ski, Young Jock, Ryan Cameron, Greg Street. We all had a forum. He came. He was the only Republican that showed up. And yes, he got booed. Somebody heckled him from the crowd. And he also got some applause from a couple of people for some points he landed. But the thing is, the guy showed up, which is rare in the political atmosphere we have today. So that was one dynamic. What it did not obviously motivate people to vote for him who are already not going to vote for him. I don't think he changed minds. But what it did is it stopped a narrative against him that would have suggested he does not talk to Black people. That it stopped that narrative. Stacey Abrams has had a strong emphasis on talking to Black communities. I moderated an event with her for Black business owners about 4 weeks ago. She's on point with strategy, remedy, making sure that contractors actually get their fair due in the state of Georgia. Remember, state contracting for minority citizens is less than 1%. Less than 1%. She has a remedy for that on day one. He does not. He does not believe in minority mandates in contracts for the state. So while his appeal is optical at best, it's the strategy element or the policy element that he is contrary to the demographic, but for some reason he lands his presentation quite well.
Yeah, I mean, because last time, since it was razor thin and now he's winning by about 7, at least for now, gives you a sense that he picked up momentum. Yeah. And so, and by the way, there's one other factor that we should mention there, which is that Kemp was not a Trumpy. He did not, agree with Trump to basically say, oh, the election was stolen, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe that tiny amount of moderation helped him pick up votes in Georgia as well. And so if that's true, well, then maybe that's a lesson for other Republicans that it might actually help you not to agree with a lunatic. Yeah. All right, now let's go to Ohio. Important updates there. 42% of the vote in now, so that's a significant number. And Tim Ryan's still holding on to a lead, 51.1 to 48.9, so about a 2-point lead with 42% reporting. Again, context here, in the governor's race, Mike DeWine has already won. It's been called with 40% of the vote in. He's winning by about 18 points. So the Republican governor is winning by 18 points, but J.D. Vance is losing by 2 points. So that is interesting, right? So it doesn't mean that he's going to lose, but it does mean that he is massively underperforming in Ohio. Why is he underperforming? As we talked about earlier, Tim Ryan on policies we didn't think was great, but on the aggressive attitude, he was fantastic. And on his rhetoric and his toughness, he was great in the debates, landed a lot of blows against J.D. Vance, and it looks like it made a difference. Now, whether it made enough of a difference to win, we won't know until the end of the night, but right now, Tim Ryan leading by 2. Rashad, thoughts on that race?
You know, different strokes for different folks, man. I'm actually proud that this strategy has been effective because I like aggressive politics. I think it creates transparency. I think it challenges an individual and their lunacy in a way that's direct. And I appreciate the fact that we can see some positive gains from aggressive campaigning. I'm not talking about violent campaigning. That's a whole different thing. I'm talking about aggressive campaigning, in your face, willing to say what needs to be said at the time. And I'm okay with it. It's good.
Yep, agreed. Give you one more here. Let's go to Texas. By the way, we just passed 6 o'clock a little while ago. So now Arizona, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, obviously. Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Louisiana, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Mexico, New York, and Wyoming have now closed. So other than the West Coast, They're almost all closed now. And so in Texas, it's Greg Abbott versus Beto O'Rourke. This one, Beto ran a very close race against Ted Cruz in Texas. This one is not quite as close, 52.8 to 46.1. So it's not over, but it also doesn't look promising. So about a 7-point lead for Greg Abbott in that governor's race, with 34% in. So Abbott was leading in the polls. This seems to confirm the polls. So right now, not looking good, but still a lot to report. Anna, do you have other numbers?
I'm looking around. Not enough precincts reporting to really make much of a difference. I can't remember. Did you mention the congressional race in Florida's 10th district between Democrat Maxwell Alejandro Frost and?
Yeah,
okay.
Maxwell Frost won. That was the first. Won, yeah, that was the first call of the night, and he's a good, solid, young progressive, and he's going to Congress. So that's wonderful.
So far in Pennsylvania, with 32% of the precincts reporting, Summerlee is beating Republican Mike Doyle considerably. She's at 71.7%. He's at 28.3%.
So Summerlee, Anna, Summerlee is a Justice Democrat, and she had a very tough primary where a number of corporate PACs and Israeli PACs, American PACs that clearly state in their title that they're for Israel, came in and spent money against her, but she did pull it out against a corporate Democrat. That district is very blue, so she will be going to Congress. So she's leading by a lot, and that won't change. So Summerlee and Maxwell Frost will be two solid progressives headed to Congress. So that's the good news so far from this night.
In Tennessee's 7th congressional district, the lead is the other way around. Republican Mark is leading by a lot. There's only 14% of the precincts reporting, but don't be hard on me, because if John were here, he would definitely share those numbers, and you would go back and forth with him giddily, Jink. But nonetheless, Mark Green is at 75.5%. Odessa Kelly, the Democrat, is at 22.6%.
So Odessa is a really solid progressive, and she got thrown to the wolves in that redistricting. She was in a really competitive district that she had a really solid chance at winning. She actually got good press, which almost never happens. And then the redistricting hit, and she got put in a very heavily Republican district. And so she's a massive underdog there. So it's not too surprising. I'll go to Michigan. Gretchen Whitmer running for governor, since right-wingers were not able to assassinate her. And she's running against, one of the lunatics, Tudor Dixon. And Tudor Dixon is just named something crazy, and she believes it. And so...
just the name. I know you don't like to make fun of people's names because you've got a weird name, but Tudor Dixon... Okay,
I do have a weird name. Okay, 52.7 to 45.9. So with it's just 9% of the voters in, but it's Whitmer with about a 7-point lead in Michigan. So let me talk generally now about some of the races that are important. Nevada doesn't have numbers in yet, but that's a very important race in Nevada for the Senate, because it's one of the close ones, and the incumbent there is a Democrat, Cortez Mastro, and she had the lead. She was supposed to win. It tightened at the end. I think she ran a non-existent campaign where she mainly hid most of the campaign. So I am very worried that she's going to lose in surprising fashion, and that is going to greatly affect the composition of the Senate. And the other important Senate race is in New Hampshire, and I do have an update there. So it's incumbent Maggie Hassan versus, or as I used to call her, Hassan, but it turns out it's pronounced Hassan. Versus Don Bolduc. Don Bolduc might be slightly crazier than Tudor Dixon, but that's a race that I'd be interested in. Bolduc versus Dixon on who's crazier. 98% of the precincts reporting it's 49-51. Anyway, no, back to New Hampshire, the real race. Hassan's got a big lead, not about exactly a 20-point lead, with 18% of the votes in. So unclear in New Hampshire if the mail-in ballots came in first, in which case Bolduc will close a little bit, but it's nice to see a nice 20-point cushion there for the Democrat Maggie Hassan. And I'm worried about that race too, because she also ran a non-existent race.
Yeah. Let me say something generally. While we are even close, we're close when it should be a blowout because of a lack of delivery.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people don't want to talk about the truth of why individuals have an adverse sentiment to politicians, Democrats, corporate Democrats. If they delivered on the resume, and every time I say this, I get criticized, but I'm okay with criticism, it's fine. If they would have delivered on the resume they campaigned on, if Biden would have delivered, if Harris would have delivered, these elections would not be close. Look at the polling data. I'm not saying this based on feeling. The polling data says we're not voting this way because we are pro this person or anti that person. Everything, your top 5 items are related to a policy. Is related to a policy. And all of those policies were connected to something Biden and Harris campaigned on. Mm-hmm. Now, did they deliver some things? Of course they did. But people vote their feeling. And if we created policy that gave light and room and ability, capacity, opportunity for individuals, guess what? They can't run malicious campaigns against you. And the feeling of the average American will say, you know what? I hear the rhetoric. I see the commercials. I'm looking online, but I don't feel it. I don't feel this. So people still vote feelings. We are human beings. Human beings are not 100% logical. We're not 100% emotional. We're all of that. And until our political structure can connect to every person on a human level rather than an erudite level or a level of feeling and nothing else, until we can embrace the human experience and be willing to challenge power, because it's human to challenge power, to challenge oppression. It is human to not want to be oppressed. Until we realize that these elected officials are supposed to be representatives of us, and until they get it too, we will have this continued disconnect, and we're arguing over people, and we're having conversation about folk that don't even match up. It's like saying a person that has never done surgery against a person who is a 30-year surgeon. The skill set does not match, but they are matching in the political arena because we have failed to connect the ideology, the platform, and the policy to the person in our delivery. And that's everybody.
But the way the system is set up, with unlimited campaign cash flowing into the campaign coffers of both Democrats and Republicans, with members of Congress from both parties investing in individual stocks, meaning they literally have a vested interest in ensuring that these corporations maximize their profits, because maximize profits for these corporations means a real nice stock portfolio for these members of Congress. I say that because as long as the system is set up this way, both political parties will continue to engage in the illusion of governing. And that illusion of governing is all about the theater. It's about investigations. It's about pandering to people based on identity politics issues without actually really caring about those issues at all. I think we've seen how that's played out once Democrats are in power, once they're in charge. I mean, I can't get over the fact that voters in Georgia showed up. They organized. They got out the vote. They did what was necessary to ensure that 2 Democrats won the Senate runoff races in that state. And they did it, mostly Black voters, by the way.
Yep.
They led that organizing effort based on the promise from the Democratic Party that they would pass a voting rights bill, and they did not do it. You can't keep running on these issues to galvanize the voters and then turn your back on them and think it's not going to bite you in the ass later.
That's right.
You just can't.
Yep. So I'm going to show exit polls that back up exactly what both of you are saying in a second. But first, I have a little bit of a hopeful update from the state of Georgia. Okay. So first, before that, I have a bad update from the state of Georgia. Marjorie Taylor Greene has won. She won by about 30 points. That is not surprising. That's a R plus 31 district. When we say R plus something, that means Republicans there are more Republicans than Democrats in that district by about 31 points in that case. But here comes Stacey Abrams. With 58% of the vote in, she has closed the lead to 4.5. So it used to be 7, now it's 4.5. So that's an interesting development. And meanwhile, Warnock now with 51 to 47, basically. So about a 4-point lead, 3.5 now. Latest update, 3.5-point lead for Warnock. He's still above 50, and now 62% of the votes are in. That's a lot of votes. So now we're getting to a point where, okay. I mean, Warnock's got a shot at knocking Walker out here. It's all of a sudden it's possible. And Abrams, it's going to be super tough, but she's still within striking distance with 58% reporting. So a little bit more hopeful than before. So sometimes that hope turns into something real. Sometimes it's false hope in the middle of an election counting. Remember, we're counting votes. The votes are already in, right?
Yeah.
But that's a good update, and I wanted to share that with you guys.